A quiet street. A late summer night. One man walks alone. Hoodie, notebook, nothing illegal. But to a watchful officer, he's already guilty. Within minutes, suspicion turns to confrontation, and a single assumption sets off a chain of events that nearly destroys a federal undercover operation. This isn't just about one man or one cop. It's about the terrifying power of prejudice, the hidden rot inside the system, and the night it all came crashing into the open. What happens next will chill you to the core. The night carried a stillness that felt unnatural, broken only by the whisper of a late summer breeze brushing across Michael's face. He walked with quiet composure down a street he didn't know well. A plain hoodie, worn jeans, nothing remarkable. Yet behind his calm stride lay a constant vigilance, his eyes scanning each house, each car, each mailbox, as though every detail might reveal something unseen. To a casual passerby, it might look strange. To the wrong set of eyes, it looked suspicious, and the wrong set of eyes was already on him. Parked at the edge of the cul-de-sac, Officer Craig sat in his cruiser, sipping the last of his bitter coffee when Michael entered his view. Instantly, Craig's instincts twisted into suspicion. His hand tightened on the wheel, his thoughts rushing faster than reason. "What's this guy up to?" he muttered. Then it happened. Michael paused at a mailbox, scribbling a few lines in a small notepad. That sealed it in Craig's mind. Suspicion turned to certainty. Craig flicked on his headlights and rolled forward, the sudden beam cutting through the night. Michael didn't flinch. He stood steady, his expression unreadable, even as Craig pulled up, stepped out, and let his hand hover close to his holster. "Hey, you," Craig barked, his voice edged with authority more than curiosity. Michael turned, a polite smile flickering across his face, though his body remained perfectly still. "Evening, officer. Just doing some work." Craig narrowed his eyes, scanning Michael's clothes, his posture, his skin. "Work? You live around here?" Michael shook his head slowly. "No, but—" Craig cut him off, stepping closer. "Then, why are you here? It's almost midnight." The air between them thickened, the glow of the street lamps stretching their shadows long and menacing. Michael took a measured breath, careful not to show unease. "I'm not doing anything wrong, officer, just taking notes for a project." "What kind of project?" Craig demanded, his suspicion sharpened by an old prejudice he never dared to name. Michael hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I'd rather not say. It's sensitive work." Craig's jaw flexed. The answer felt evasive, unacceptable. His voice lowered, almost a growl. "You don't belong here. Either explain yourself, or we're going to have a problem." Michael held his ground, calm but steady. "I'm not breaking any laws." That calmness was gasoline on Craig's temper. His thumb brushed the snap of his holster as frustration built. The quiet street seemed louder now, the rustle of leaves, the hum of distant traffic, the pounding of distrust between two men. "You'd better stop playing games and tell me exactly what you're doing." Craig snapped, stepping in closer, his body language designed to intimidate. Michael shifted a half-step back, hands visible, voice firm but controlled. "I've told you what I can. There's no law against being here." Craig scoffed, anger bubbling over. "Your job? What kind of job means wandering through neighborhoods at night scribbling notes? Sounds like you're casing the place to me." Michael's face stayed calm, though his eyes flickered with annoyance. "I'm not casing anything, and I'd appreciate it if you stopped making baseless accusations." The word baseless cut deep. Craig's pride bristled. He stepped forward, voice sharp. "Baseless? You think I don't see what's going on? Hand me that notebook. Now." Michael tightened his grip on the small pad. "It's private. I'm under no obligation to show it." That was the breaking point. Craig's patience snapped. He lunged, seizing Michael's arm. Michael pulled back instinctively. His voice rose, not in anger, but in defense. I'm not resisting, but you're crossing a line. Craig's eyes darkened. Crossing a line? You're the one sneaking around and refusing to cooperate. His radio crackled to life as he barked into it. Suspicious individual refusing to identify himself, requesting backup at Pine Grove Lane. Michael sighed, frustration heavy in his voice. This isn't necessary. I don't want this to escalate. Craig smirked, emboldened now that backup was on its way. You should have thought about that before playing coy. Within minutes, the quiet street exploded in red and blue. Another cruiser arrived. A young officer stepped out, his unease visible in the shifting of his stance. What's going on? The rookie asked. Craig didn't hesitate, pointing toward Michael like presenting a criminal. Caught him wandering suspicious behavior, refused to hand over his notebook. The younger officer looked at Michael, then back at Craig. Did he break any laws? Craig's glare silenced the doubt. He's resisting. Michael's calm composure unsettled Craig even more. I'm not resisting. I'm trying to avoid conflict. I have rights, and you're violating them. The younger cop shifted awkwardly, but his silence betrayed complicity. Craig stepped forward, barking, Enough! Turn around! Hands behind your back! Michael hesitated only for a moment before complying. His jaw clenched as the cuffs bit into his wrists, Craig tightening them harder than necessary. This is a mistake, Michael murmured, his voice low but firm. Craig sneered. We'll see about that. The cruiser door slammed. The younger officer lingered, troubled, but said nothing as the flashing lights painted the neighborhood in blood red and cold blue. The drive to the station was suffocating in its silence, broken only by the static of the police radio. Craig's satisfaction filled the air, while Michael sat quietly, his eyes on the window, his thoughts locked away. Inside the station, fluorescent lights flickered, casting their sterile glow. Craig marched Michael in with unnecessary force, parading him like evidence. Behind the desk, a weary sergeant looked up, eyes narrowing at the restrained man. What's this about? She asked. Craig wasted no time. Caught him prowling around. Pine Grove Lane. Wouldn't explain himself. Suspicious behavior all the way. Michael stood quietly, gaze steady, waiting. The sergeant raised an eyebrow. Did he resist? Craig muttered. Not physically, but he was obstructing. Finally, Michael spoke. His voice was calm, measured, but sharp enough to cut the silence. He was standing on a public sidewalk. Not breaking the law, not causing trouble, just existing. Yet for one officer, that was reason enough to put him in handcuffs. The sergeant on duty, a woman seasoned in calming heated situations, sighed. All right, process him. Let's figure this out. Her tone carried the weariness of someone who'd seen arrogance outweigh judgment too many times. Officer Craig led Michael down the corridor, muttering curses under his breath. As they passed a small office, Michael's sharp eyes caught something the officer missed. A nameplate on a desk, Special Agent Williams. A faint smile curled across his lips. Craig never noticed. After the paperwork was hastily shoved through, Michael was tossed into a dim holding cell. A hard bench, 4 walls, nothing else. But Michael didn't appear rattled. He leaned back, posture calm, as though he had all the time in the world. That composure unsettled Craig more than any outburst could. At the front desk, Craig smirked, proudly. Another one off the streets. The sergeant's eyes cut toward him, sharp as glass. Don't pat yourself on the back just yet. We'll see if there's even a charge that sticks. Michael heard the words. He smiled faintly, leaning against the wall, his calm demeanor dripping with quiet defiance. He knew something they didn't, and the longer he stayed silent, the more nervous Craig became. Nearly an hour passed before Michael's voice finally echoed across the room, low, controlled. I need to speak with someone in charge. Craig barked out a laugh. You'll speak when I say you can. The sergeant turned her head sharply. Protocol says he's entitled to request a supervisor. Craig rolled his eyes but reached for the phone anyway, muttering his annoyance as he called the shift supervisor. Moments later, Craig yanked open the cell door, expecting resistance. Instead, Michael rose smoothly, walking beside him without hesitation. That unshaken calm gnawed at Craig's gut. Inside the supervisor's office, a tall man in a crisp suit waited. His badge glinted on his belt. His mere presence filled the room with authority. Craig faltered when the man extended his hand to Michael. "Agent Holloway," the man said evenly. Michael clasped the hand firmly. "Thank you for coming, Agent Williams. Sorry for the interruption." Craig's face drained of color. His throat went dry. "Wait, Agent?" Michael turned his gaze on Craig, eyes steady and sharp. "That's right, FBI. I've been conducting an undercover operation in this area for weeks." The room thickened with tension. Agent Williams's gaze snapped to Craig. "Is this true? Did you arrest an undercover agent without probable cause?" Craig stuttered, words failing him. I didn't know. He wouldn't say who he was." "Did you ask?" Michael cut in, his voice calm but laced with venom. The supervisor's expression hardened. "Craig, we'll discuss this later. Step outside." Craig stumbled out, face flushed, pride collapsing under the weight of humiliation. For the first time in his career, he felt the ground crumble beneath him. He had dragged a man into custody with smug confidence, only to discover that man carried the weight of federal authority. Inside, Agent Williams questioned Michael. "How much did this incident compromise the operation?" Michael leaned back, composed as ever. "Hard to say. I was monitoring a network we've tracked for months. Tonight was critical. Key players were supposed to meet. But thanks to this circus..." His words trailed off, frustration masked by restraint. Williams rubbed his temple. "This could set us back severely." Michael's tone sharpened. "This also exposes a bigger problem, officers like him. Men who don't just damage public trust, they endanger national security." Outside, the sergeant confronted Craig. "You've really done it this time." Craig shot back, defensive. "How was I supposed to know? He wasn't cooperating." "You didn't ask," she snapped. "That's the problem. You jumped to conclusions, and now it's blowing up in your face." Moments later, Agent Williams stepped out, his voice carrying over the silence of the station. "Sergeant, I want a full incident report. Include every detail." Craig bristled. "I didn't do anything wrong." "He was suspicious." "I was doing my job." Michael emerged, his voice low but cutting like a blade. "Your job is to protect and serve, not harass and assume. You never asked. You never followed protocol. You saw me and decided I was guilty." Craig's protest died on his tongue. Williams's stare grew icy. "Do you realize how close you came to blowing a federal operation? How much damage you nearly caused?" Craig stammered. I didn't know. He didn't identify himself." Michael stepped closer, his calm presence overwhelming. "I didn't identify myself because I was undercover. Something I could have explained, if you gave me the chance." Silence gripped the station. Williams turned back to the sergeant. "File a formal complaint. This officer's actions demand accountability." Craig's face turned pale. "A complaint? You're serious?" "Dead serious," Williams replied. "This wasn't just reckless. It was dangerous. And it's not the first time." Michael's voice softened, but its weight lingered. "This isn't about destroying your career. It's about accountability. Because if no one holds you responsible, you'll keep doing this. To others. To people who don't have the protection of a badge." The sergeant nodded, pen scratching across her notes. The station was silent, officers exchanging uneasy glances, but none daring to speak. In the days that followed, internal affairs dug deep into Craig's past. Every arrest, every report, every complaint. The truth emerged like a dark stain across his record. A pattern of targeting men who looked like Michael. Most of the complaints had been dismissed. No evidence, no follow-through. But when laid bare, the truth was undeniable. And now, for the first time, Craig's entire career was under the unforgiving light of scrutiny. The station had changed. Officers whispered in corridors, conversations evaporating into silence the moment Craig walked into the room. Some muttered weak defenses, just a misunderstanding. But most avoided him altogether, unwilling to stand too close to a sinking ship. Michael, meanwhile, pressed forward with his FBI work. Outwardly, his focus never wavered. Inwardly, though the bitter taste of that night lingered, he knew Craig was not an anomaly. He was a symptom of something far larger, something embedded deep in the fabric of the system itself. 1 week later, the chief of police stood at a podium flanked by stern-faced members of internal affairs. Cameras flashed, microphones hummed. Reporters leaned forward, hungry for answers. "We take these allegations very seriously," the chief declared, his voice measured, careful. "Our officers are held to the highest standards. Any behavior that undermines trust between law enforcement and the community will not be tolerated." The words fell heavy. Craig, watching from his living room, sat rigid, his jaw clenched, his face pale. He'd been placed on administrative leave, but he already knew what the verdict would be. His career was finished. The community's reaction came like a wave. Some shouted for Craig's immediate firing, outraged that his behavior had been allowed for so long. Others insisted he was a scapegoat, a man punished for just doing his job. Pine Grove Lane split in two, anger clashing against denial. But the most powerful moment came not from the podium or the protests. It came from Michael. Sitting in a cold room before a panel of investigators, he testified with a calm, unwavering tone. "When I walk into a neighborhood," he said, voice steady as stone, "I am not just a man. I carry every stereotype, every prejudice, every assumption that men like Officer Craig have been taught to believe. And that is not just his failing. It is the failing of the system that told him those assumptions were acceptable." The room was silent. No one dared interrupt. His words did not fade when the hearing ended. They ignited. Headlines blared across televisions and smartphones. FBI agent exposes racial profiling in local police department. The incident became more than a controversy. It became a lightning rod for reform. Protests surged. Town halls overflowed with voices demanding accountability. Activists pressed for mandatory bias training. Conversations about race and power seeped into every corner of Pine Grove. When the investigation concluded, the verdict was brutal but expected. Craig was dismissed. Internal Affairs cited a pattern of conduct unbecoming of an officer. A polite phrase masking years of unchecked prejudice. Michael received the news while preparing for another operation. His reaction was cool, almost detached. "One down," he muttered under his breath. "But there's still so much more to do." Back at the department, change, however small, began. Bias training was no longer optional. A civilian oversight board was created to review misconduct complaints. Tiny steps, fragile steps, but steps nonetheless. The ripple spread further than anyone imagined. Pine Grove's community, once content to live in silence, found its voice. Those who had long felt invisible now spoke with power. Town meetings grew crowded. People demanded more, demanded justice. Michael carried on with his assignments, but the night on Pine Grove Lane lingered in his memory. It wasn't the first time he had been profiled, and he knew it would not be the last. But now, the story was out. The silence had been broken. As for Craig, without the badge, he was stripped bare. No shield, no authority, just another man among the crowd. For the first time, he was forced to listen, to the news, to his neighbors, to the quiet voice inside himself that whispered what he had denied for so long. I was wrong. The incident did not fade into obscurity. It became a case study, dissected in police academies and training seminars across the country. Instructors replayed the night's events as a warning: how bias blinds, how prejudice poisons judgment, and how one officer's assumptions nearly dismantled a federal operation. And for those who watched this story unfold, one truth lingered: assumptions have power. They shape how we see, how we act, and how we treat others. But assumptions can be broken. It begins with a simple question: what if I'm wrong? For officers sworn to protect and serve, Michael's story stands as a reminder. Authority is not just the power to enforce the law. It is the duty to honor the dignity of every soul you encounter. And for the rest of us, it is a call to demand more. Not only from those in power, but from ourselves. If this story struck a chord, take a moment, reflect, challenge your own assumptions, and stand for a world where justice is not whispered, but spoken aloud. Share this video. Leave your voice in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more untold truths that pierce the silence. Because sometimes, it is in the darkest conflicts that we find the brightest clarity.